Good morning. Today on Spotlight, an in-depth look at the 3 statewide proposals on the November general election ballot: financial disclosure, term limits, voting rights, and reproductive freedom. Before you vote, understand what's at stake. Eric Lufer, president of the nonpartisan Citizens Research Council of Michigan, will explain Proposal 1, 2, and 3. It's Sunday, October the 9th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. And welcome to Spotlight, 3 statewide ballot proposals that you have to make a decision on. And the man joining me today to help give you information, and who I should say is Switzerland in all of this, in this very partisan world that we now live in. He's not going to tell you how to vote. He's just going to explain these proposals so that hopefully when you go into the booth, you will be a better informed voter. Eric Lufer, welcome to Spotlight.
Chuck, it's great to be with you again.
It's good having you. You have been dealing with these type of complicated proposals for a long time, and we should just give people a little information about Citizens Research Council of Michigan. You've been there for 35 years.
That's right.
And since 2014, you've been the president of this organization, correct?
Correct. And the Citizens Research Council is a 106-year-old organization based on the idea that better information leads to better policy making. So how do we find the information, give them to the policymakers? And at this time of year, when we're voting on constitutional amendments, we, the people, are the policymakers. So we have information on our website, so you can come find out about these. And we did a webinar, and our mission is just to get information out there so people can be informed voters.
Right, and you have some more stuff coming up this week as well, where people can get additional information.
Right, there's a number of webinars. They can contact me for that kind of information.
Okay, and we'll put some of the information on the screen so they'll know how to get in touch. All right, let's start. Proposal 1. I'm going to read the top line because this is actually what people will see when they walk in the booth, and then I'll let you take it from there. Proposal 1, a proposal to amend the state constitution to require annual public financial disclosure reports by legislators and other state officers, and change state legislator term limit to 12 total years in the legislature. All right, let's take the financial disclosure first. Pros and cons, and what will this do?
All right, so Michigan is one of 2 states that currently doesn't have a law requiring financial disclosure.
Right. And we're in a real minority with that compared to the rest of the nation.
Yeah, we're very much behind. And to be clear, the legislature has always had the ability to pass a law. This whole thing started off as a petition drive, and they decided, let's just go to the legislature and ask them to do it. In essence, what the legislature has done is say, for the length of our time as a state, we haven't done this. We want to pass a constitutional amendment, so you tell us that we should do our job. Not the best way to do things. So it would require the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, members of the House and Senate to annually file financial disclosure information. Mm-hmm. It goes to the Secretary of State's office. In that form that they would have to fill out, they would have to list their assets, their sources of income, their liabilities, the positions they've held, if it's on a corporate board or a nonprofit board, anything like that, arrangements for future employment, so we know if there's sort of that revolving door, leave the legislature one day, start in a lobbying firm or some other business the next day, any gifts they received, any payments made in or reimbursements received for travel, or payments made in lieu of honoraria to a charity or something like that.
So much more transparency than what currently exists.
Absolutely.
All right, the flip side, the fact that this is just now coming, that we're sort of in a minority on this compared to the rest of the nation, one would say, okay, well, what has taken us so long to even get something like this before the voters to be able to say yay or nay? What's the argument against having so much transparency?
So the goal is to kind of thread the needle, right? You don't want to be so transparent that you're telling people they have to give away all their secrets, right? even legislators are entitled to a private life. So we want to provide enough transparency so we know any decisions they're making are in the state's best interest, not their best interest, but not so transparent that good people decide not to run for office.
Right.
We have to find the right balance. When this was first started off as a petition, the requirement was that they would say not only where the income comes from, but how much income. And they backed off in this constitutional amendment. What they're doing with this constitutional amendment is setting a minimum. The legislature could go in and make it stronger than this constitutional amendment. They can't make it weaker, but they can make it stronger. So we can, if we need to get more information, the legislature could do that. They just can't do less than this. So I think there's a good thing here. 48 other states, Congress does it. It's sort of the bare minimum we should expect from our elected officials.
Sure, and indeed, a lot of people out there are saying, it's my money that pays all this, so I ought to know where my money's going. Very quickly, before we go to the break, amending the legislature in terms of the number of years that legislators can serve. This has been a major issue for a long time. I remember when term limitation came in, the people seemed to love it. They felt like, hey, this is a trigger that we can have. We can boot you out of office. We don't want you to serve a lifetime there. This is just supposed to be public service, not necessarily careers.
Right now we have the strictest chamber limits of any state in the nation. 15 states have term limits and ours are the shortest. 6 years in the House, 3 terms, or 2 terms in the Senate, which is 8 years. This would change it to 12 years and allow the candidate to decide, do I want to be 12 years in the House, 12 years in the Senate, mix and match, whatever they want to do. The idea is, we've had this for 30 years, and we've seen in those 30 years that we've really weakened the legislature relative to the executive branch, and they're so focused on electioneering the leadership that comes in, not only the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader, but committee chairs. They just don't seem to get enough experience on any topic, or even Robert's Rules of Order or things like that, that we're really throwing them in and destining them to fail because they just don't have the ropes enough. The executive branch brings in good people around the governor, people who've been around in Lansing for a long time. So the proponents of this argue that by lengthening the time, allow people to choose how they want to use that time, we'll get committee chairs that have been around, know the topic better. We'll get a Speaker of the House and Senate Majority Leader that know their thing a little bit better. So we're not doing away with term limits, we're just changing it a little bit. California and Arkansas adopted term limits about the same time we did in the early 1990s. They've both made the same change. So we're following an example of 2 states that look just like us back in the early 90s, and now we'll follow their example.
But the flip side of that also is, are you giving the lobbyists, have they become more powerful than the legislators because they don't get term limited out, they know the system backwards and forwards, and sometimes can take advantage of legislators who do not come into that office with a lot of experience?
Yeah, so we can think back before term limits, and there were people that stuck around for a while. Part of the reason why we adopted term limits, but they also knew the ropes, right? They knew their issue inside and out. If somebody came in and didn't have a full story, they could hold them to account, saying, I understand this system. You're not telling it like it is. So we've given up some of that expertise for the benefit of rotation and turnover in office. In doing so, as you suggest, the lobbyists who have been around for a while and know their subject matters have become the issue experts that you legislators are going to, asking questions, trying to find that information. So the lobbyist job has gotten harder in some way because they have to keep educating that freshman class.
That's a very good point.
Coming in, but they're there. Class, legislative classes come and go, and the lobbyists are the same, and they stick that through that, and so they've gained strength because of this. We see that Legislators aren't going back to their constituents as much as they did before. So there's some difference in how they're doing their job because of term limits as well, I think.
Sure. Okay. It's going to be a big decision for the people of Michigan to make. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to turn our attention to Proposal 2, which deals with voting rights. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight, talking to Eric Lufer. He is the president of the Citizens Research Council of Michigan. They are Switzerland in this race. They're just providing all the information. They're not telling you how to vote, but making sure that once you have the information, hopefully you will know how you want to vote on these statewide ballot proposals. Proposal 2, I'll read it, the top line that people will see, a proposal to amend the state constitution to add provisions regarding elections. What will it do?
So it does a number of things. You'll see when you get in there, that's the top line, but it has a number of bullets underneath it. So it deals with voter identification, absentee voting, early in-person voting, and what the elections officials do after the fact. What you need to know about this amendment: we had the 2020 election, there was all the controversy, middle of the pandemic, record number of people voted absentee, and there were allegations that the election was stolen, there were improprieties, things like that. There was a law proposed in the legislature, passed by both chambers. Governor Whitmer vetoed it. That became a petition that collected signatures, waiting for the Board of Canvassers to certify it. If that gets certified, then the House and the Senate can act on it without the threat of a gubernatorial veto. That bill, that petition, aims to make it harder to vote. It makes it so you have to have more identification in more places to cast your vote, and it does a number of other things. This constitutional amendment, this proposal, aims to head that off by putting things in the Constitution. If it's Constitution versus law, Constitution wins. Mm-hmm. So that was the effort here. The voter identification makes it clear that a signature is good. If you've registered to vote, you've showed your identification, as long as your signature on your application and your ballot match what the clerk has, they can understand that you are who you say you are. Mm-hmm. The absentee voting, we did this in 2018, made it so everyone can have the opportunity, so it clarifies some of that thing, some of the implementation of that 2018 amendment. The biggest thing right now, a number of cities and townships, you can just put your name on a list. I always want to vote absentee. They've been doing that as a practice. They would put that into the Constitution, making it clear you can do that. Provide drop boxes, some of the other things. So it's putting in the Constitution a lot of these things that are current practice, and we'll just firm it up. Nobody's going to mess with those types of things. Mm-hmm. A new provision is 9 days of early in-person voting. So your city or your township, for starting the second Saturday before the election, running through the Sunday immediately before, has to have a place for people to come in, get their ballot, mark it up, put it in the machine, they're done. Nine days. So this is sort of in-person absentee voting. You get to do it early. You get to know your ballot went into the machine. No uncertainty that it's sitting in a back room in a clerk's office or anything like that. You saw it go in, you got your little sticker that said, I voted. The post-election stuff is, you recall back in 2020, there was the controversy about the audits. Down in Arizona, they had this third party.
Very controversial.
And it'll say, only elected officials can conduct the audit. It has to be done in public, so anybody concerned about it can sit in the room, watch what's going on. Sort of like watching paint dry, but if that's what you want to do, you can
whatever
be
floats
sure,
your boat. Right.
You can be sure that it's happening. And the canvassing of the vote has to be according to the numbers on the tally sheet. They can't come up with any other reasons to say, we like this number or we don't. Numbers are what the numbers are.
All right, very good. All right, Proposal 3 We're going to talk about that right after this quick pause for the cause, and that deals with what may be the most controversial proposal that you will have to weigh in on. It deals with reproductive rights. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Eric Lufer, Proposal 3. We are seeing television ads galore surrounding this one, and this may be the issue that really brings people out to vote, particularly if they aren't doing absentee ballot voting and they're actually going to the polls to vote one way or the other. A proposal to amend the state constitution to establish new individual right to reproductive freedom, including right to make all decisions about pregnancy and abortion, allow state to regulate abortion in some cases, and forbid prosecution of individuals exercising established right.
So we survived for 50 years under Roe v. Wade, and this past year the U.S. Supreme Court in the Dobbs decision decided that was wrongly decided, and without a federal law or guidance, it's up to the states to decide in 50 different states, how do you want to do this? Michigan has a law in the books, one of the strictest in the nation, that says only to save the life of the mother can we have an abortion. It doesn't matter how the woman became pregnant, if there was rape, incest, all that type, only for the health of the mother. So ordinarily, a lesser topic, you might say, well, good, the legislature should deal with this type of thing. But we can sort of read the tea leaves and say this legislature might disallow it, the next one might allow it. You become like the pendulum on the clock. The people don't know which way to go. The statute of limitations for this is 6 years, so even a healthcare professional, it might be legal now, won't be legal in a few years with something, so.
And the nice way of saying that is that depending on which political party has the power,
right,
they may sway this issue to the liking of their constituents. And this is a way of making sure that neither party tampers with it, because it now goes into the Constitution. And we're seeing this all over the country in different states.
All over the country, yes.
Right. Okay.
So the proposed constitutional amendment would, in large part, continuing what we had under the Roe decision, but it goes beyond that. How does it go beyond that? Well, first of all, it says that it's up to the mother and the healthcare professional to decide. This isn't the job of a politician or anyone else. It's up to them, and the thing that matters is the life of the mother, the health of the mother. The unborn child doesn't play a part in this decision making as the state is concerned in making any laws or regulations. It goes beyond that. You mentioned that in the highlight. So we're not only talking about abortion, we're talking about prenatal care, childbirth, postpartum care, contraception, sterilization, miscarriage management, and fertility care. So we're embedding a lot of reproductive rights for women into the Constitution. The other major change, if you paid any attention to those US Supreme Court hearings, they were arguing back and forth, is 15 weeks the right amount of time, 17 weeks, 20 weeks, 10 weeks, going back and forth. And this amendment says there is no date certain. It's really about the viability of the baby inside the mother's womb. If the baby can be born, or C-section or however, and survive outside the womb, then the mother loses her ability to have an optional abortion. Then it's up to the state to be able to regulate how that happens. There's 3 things that could happen on November 9th, the day after the election. First option is that we could defeat this proposal. We look to the state Supreme Court, who have cases going on trying to decide if there's an implicit right to abortion in the state constitution. They could say that that there is none, and then we fall back on that 1931 law that's very strict. The legislature could amend that, could repeal it. We could, deal with all that type of thing. It becomes a legislative matter. If this is adopted, then it becomes a constitutional right. We go on basically the way we were under Roe. I don't want to, it clearly goes beyond that, so I'm not trying to say this is returning to what we had. And the third option is that we defeat Proposal 3 and the state Supreme Court finds that there is that implicit right. Under any of those circumstances, there's going to be lawsuits. It'll be a good time to be a lawyer dealing with abortion rights in the state of Michigan, I suppose in the 49 other states as well, because there's a great deal of uncertainty. And even in this proposal, there's a great deal of ambiguity in certain words, and exactly what does that mean? Is it applying only to adults? Does it apply to teens? What exactly is a healthcare professional? On and on and on. So a great deal of uncertainty.
All right, need to sneak this last break in, and we'll come right back with some a quick question and wrap it all up. We'll be right back. Eric, we are seeing a boatload of people say, I want to vote not on election day, but before election day in the privacy of my home. How does this compare to past years here in Michigan?
Prior to really the 2020 election, when most people had to show up on election day, the campaigns knew there was a date certain, and they would work up until that Monday before with advertising and blitzing and knocking door to door. And now they've had to preload that. They had to get that done by the end of September. And they're hoping now to sway you as you're receiving those in your mailbox and making your decision. But it's really diffused the decision-making period and made it harder on the campaigns. Some people have already voted. Nothing I can do or say is going to convince them because their ballot's in the clerk's office.
If you need more information, go to the CRC website. You can also go to the Secretary of State's website. And in a few weeks, you'll be able to see the top of the ticket. Governor Gretchen Whitmer and her challenger, Mrs. Tudor Dixon, square off in our debate with our sister stations from Grand Rapids and Lansing at Oakland University. I'm Chuck Stokes. Have a great week.